And it's another good morning, everybody, after a long weekend. But it was a good weekend with the Global Mission Celebration. All three speakers that we were privileged to hear, both at the different other churches and when we had the underground church here. I really enjoyed all of them. And not just when you say enjoyed, not just they made you feel good.
Yeah.
At times they didn't make you feel good, made you, challenged you, encouraged you. And so I think it was a great weekend. I know a lot of work went in it through a lot of people, but it was really good. And that's always been my concern that as the church has changed a little bit over the years, we've lost contact with missions and ministry involvement, and we've become just self centered more than in the past. And so I was glad to see that happen. But today we're going to talk about a local involvement, getting involved in disaster relief. Um, and so um, got a team going up Wednesday morning. I can't remember the number I heard last night, but it's a lot of people. So
Yeah, it's over 60
over 60.
from our association.
Yep. And so that's an awesome number. And so tell us what you got on your heart today.
Well, it's bad that we talk about these things when something happens, and we ought to be, as you said, talking about them more often and things like that. And of course, nobody saw this coming. I mean, we saw a hurricane
Yeah.
coming through that didn't seem to be that big of a deal when it happened, but it kept going and kept going
Yeah.
and kept going, and obviously there was a little disturbance before that dumped a bunch of rain up in the mountains, but then that came through and dumped a whole lot more rain. And as you know, the western part of our state is pretty well cut off in a lot of different regions and areas. Highways are shut down, major highways are shut down because of all that took place with Helene. So we're, we're trying to mobilize as an association. We're trying to mobilize as a church in how we can respond and meet these needs that obviously thousands of people have. Unfortunately, as of I think it was last Wednesday, I think was the last number that was given, but we're up to 227 deaths in the path of this storm. 47 of those being in North Carolina, and we all know that's going to rise. And I don't know when those numbers are going to be released, and it really, I don't guess, matters. It's just a loss of life, a loss of property. People are cut off from getting supplies and things like that. And so ever since this happened and the day after this happened, we immediately had teams being dispatched to these areas throughout Western North Carolina, but all the way down to Georgia, Florida, and then of course Florida got hit again.
Yeah.
So they had three storms in just about 6 weeks. So we've got things going on all up and down the southeast in the path of these storms. So a lot of places are sending people. We've got, I know I read this morning, we've got folks from Oklahoma, California, I want to say Texas, that are actively serving in North Carolina and helping North Carolina Baptist help people in their communities. And one of the things that we need to understand when these things happen and relief agencies come in to help, they almost always set up at a church.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because the church opens its doors, if the church is still there, opens its doors and parking lot and things like that to bring these mobile feeding units in and these we've got shower trailers that we bring in. We've got laundry trailers that we bring in so people can wash clothes and do things like that, because all that's gone. People don't realize all that's gone. So we've got feeding units set up across there. We've got all these things in place now. And as an area gets better, they'll pick those up and they'll move them to a different location as they get things opened up and more things are accessible. But we're dealing with mountains, and we're dealing with roads that have been completely gone. So trying to get things like that, big things, big trailers and stuff like, it's an impossibility. You can't do it. So you got to set up and have people come to you, but you got to get and find out where the people are. And that's what's going on right now on the ground. They're still trying to do recovery and all this in this disaster. And it's just a terrible time. We had one of our men just come back that's in our church, and he just told me, Pastor Eddie, it's devastation. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. And so, we're excited to get to go and help. We want to go and help, and we want to work hard and do what we need to do. And we want to figure out how we can do things going forward to help with that even more, because the reality is when something like this happens, everybody's gung ho for the first little while, and then it becomes tedious and it becomes work.
Yeah.
The adrenaline's wore off. You're still looking like you haven't made a dent in things, and that enthusiasm for going and helping drops off. It happens with every disaster. It happens with every crisis. So we've got to stem that. We've got to say, okay, we're going to go now, but we got to figure out how we're going to respond in the months ahead and the years ahead, because this is not something that's going to be over with in just a few weeks or a few months. It's going to be years. And we heard that last night from our director of disaster relief for our association. So I wanted to just do a couple things. One, I wanted to, churches ought to be involved in compassion ministries because that is the heart of the gospel. That is ministry. That's missions. It's meeting the needs of people. And Jesus spoke so clearly and so specifically about those things. So I want to read from Matthew 25 here in just a second, but I wanted to define a term, and I had to go back and look up this from some paperwork I've had in the past with disaster relief. But what is a crisis event? A crisis event is an occurrence that causes human suffering or creates human needs that victims cannot alleviate without assistance. So when we think of a crisis, that could be all kinds of things. That could be a shooting. It could be an ice storm. It could be a hurricane. It could be a flood. There's all types of different things. It could be a crisis situation. A terrorist attack would be one of those as well. So anything that causes human suffering and creates human needs that they can't alleviate on themselves, that's where we need help. That's where the church has to come in and be the hands and feet of Christ and alleviate some of that suffering. And we could do that in many ways, and I want to give you a list of ways we can do that here at the end. But I want to read this passage of scripture because this is my go-to passage when I think about compassion ministries. But it's Matthew 25, beginning in verse 31. It says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats." So there's going to be two groups of people here, and it's going to define how these groups are defined. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on the right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or without clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did for me." So obviously in that story, Jesus is the king, and those that are on his right are the righteous. And how are the righteous defined? They fed the hungry. They clothed the naked. They took care of the sick. They visited the ones in prison. What are those? Those are mercy ministries. Those are compassion ministries that we have as the church towards people who find themselves in bad situations and things that they can't alleviate on themselves. So who's going to meet those needs? Well, we think it ought to be the church, and the church is doing that. But there's also a second part of that, because remember, he said there's two groups of people. There's the sheep and there's the goats. Verse 41 starts out, then he will also say to those on the left, depart from me, for you are cursed into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't take me in. I was naked, and you didn't clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you didn't take care of me. Then they too will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or without clothes or sick or in prison and not help you? Then he will answer them, truly I tell you, whenever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So Jesus makes a stark contrast between those who are sheep on the right, who are considered righteous, and those who are goats that are on the left that are considered the unrighteous. And he says the righteous are going to live this way, and they're going to meet needs, and they're going to take care of things, and the others are not. And he says, when we do this to the least of these, we do it unto him. And when we don't do it to the least of these, we don't do it unto him. And therefore, that's the penalty. So we're dealing with what the attitude of a believer should be in meeting the needs. Because when Jesus walked on this earth, what did he met the needs of people. He healed the blind. He took care of diseases. He did all these things to help people. And he says we're supposed to go and do likewise. So when I think of compassion ministries, that's the passage I go to. I mean, there's other passages we could look at, but that's the one that hits the home the most with me. And a believer, a follower of Christ, when they see somebody that is in a situation where they really couldn't help being in that situation, we're supposed to have compassion towards them. We're supposed to reach out to them. We're supposed to try to alleviate that suffering that they're going through, because if there's any time in a person's life when they're going to reach out to and be receptive to what somebody showing compassion can do, it's a situation like that. I mean, they can't help themselves. They're between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, and they got nowhere else to go. So where do they come? They come to the church, and the church needs to be able to respond. So I got a list here of 9 ways a church can respond to crisis events. And I just want to run through these real quick, because some of them are pretty simple and basic, and some of them maybe we haven't thought of. But number one is, and I think this is really important, that we grieve with those who are grieving. We're going to walk into situations, I'm sure, when we get over there, and we're going to meet people who are just completely distraught, still in shock, even though this has been a couple of weeks now, I guess. They're in shock. I mean, they don't know what's going to happen. Their house is gone. They may have lost a loved one. Just all kinds of things that we can't even hardly imagine. But we need to grieve with those who are hurting. Crisis and disasters always lead to loss. So we need to understand that. Number 2, we need to pray. We heard about that last night. We need to pray. The chaos and the uncertainty of a crisis remind us just how small we really are. We talked about that the other week. When we see these things happening, it shows us how big God is and how little we really are. So it ought to lead us. It ought to lead us to be more dependent upon God. It ought to lead us to pray and seek God through these times. The third response I'd say is we got to give. We got to give. We got to monetary donations. And listen, the best thing we can do is send money. I know that sounds strange, but if you've ever been on the other side of this, where these things are coming to your area, you're going to find out real quickly that those churches and those places that are receiving these things get overburdened really, really quick. They got all this stuff flooding in. They got to try to get it out, and they got more stuff coming in than they got going out. and then they've got to remobilize things, and the logistics are a nightmare, especially if you got roads that are torn up and everything else. So we got to be real careful that we don't just jump into something. If there's not a place that's ready to receive it and do something with it, then we don't need to do that. And I know everybody wants to help and they want to send this and send that, but we got to be very specific in how we respond, because if it's not going to get to the people, we're just wasting our time.
Let me say something about that. We collected items a couple weeks ago, and that was good. It was needed because you got to get stuff there quick. You don't have time for red tape, and that's another discussion. But I was talking with Steve Smith, Pastor Steve Smith of Seagate, where all that was being collected, and we were just talking about, like you say, the logistics of all this stuff. And he says, "Do you know how much a 20-ounce bottle of water weighs?" I was like, "Well, no, Steve, I've never gone around weighing 20-ounce bottles of water." He said it weighs about 1 pound. Now you look at that trailer and you see how much water's on that trailer. How much do you think that trailer weighs? He said, thankfully, this is a disaster relief situation, so they are kind of turning their heads
Right.
as far as weight limits. But like you say, it is so much easier to move money than it is to move stuff. Now sometimes you need both, but that is something we need to think about. Again, in the beginning, you got to get stuff there as quick as
Right.
possible, because water. We all know we can't go without water long. But after it's happened, then we need to see what the best way to respond is. And I think that's sometimes hard for people, because we're from the South. If you have a loss or something, I'm going to bake you a cake and take, and then you end up with 20 cakes.
Yep.
And you're begging people to come to your house and eat it. But, so it is, and all these individuals are doing fantastic jobs. Very few of them have this as their skill or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, they're just willing vessels, just willing to be used. So that is just something that, he hit me with. And I was like, well, no. I was like, no wonder those, whatever they are from Sam's 40 packs are heavy.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's where it helps to have people on the ground there, which is why I like to not just connect with a ministry. I like to connect with a local church,
Yeah.
who says that, hey, we're doing this particular ministry, because there'll be a church that's going to be doing water. There'll be a church that's going to
Yeah.
be doing clothes. There'll be a church that's doing it, because they can't do it all. So there's going to be different ministries, different opportunities, different things that different people are collecting and making sure that they get out. So I always go back to the local church and say, hey, is there a church that we can partner with? And what are you doing and what do you need? And that way you can get on the phone or talk to them and say, hey, are you full now? Do you still need some things? Or do you, and give us a list, because the list is going to change as time goes on. It's going to it's going to go away from water and stuff like that to clothes with winter coming and things like that. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the easiest thing we can do, and we've done this with our church, we collected items, but we also had people donate money, and then we just sent it on to Send Relief or our Baptist Men. But that's the easiest way, because the people on the ground then have a pool that they can say, okay, we need this over here and we need this over here. Well, we've got money to do that, to take care of that, because people have donated money. So don't ever forget about that. That's the easiest, simplest way. You don't have to go buy nothing. You don't have to go haul something and drop it off and handle it 4 or 5 times. You can send money. They can have that stuff drop shipped right there to where they are and where they need it, and go with it. So just keep that in mind. And I know a lot of people, and believe me, that's all I've heard for the past couple of weeks is, well, we need to do this. Can we send this? Can we do this? And my answers all the time, we need to wait and see. We're going to go over there Wednesday. We're going to get to see things for ourselves. We're going to check on a couple of churches over there that I think we could partner with, and we're going to hear directly from them, so that we've got somebody we can pick up the phone, call, talk to, get in touch with, and they can let us know, exactly what they're needing and those kind of things. So just keep that in mind, that we're doing the best we can with that, and we want to do what's best and what is needed. Number 4 would be provide genuine ministry. Those devastated by tragedy need someone to come alongside them. That's what ministry is. So yes, there's going to be a need to go, and that's what we're doing. We're going Wednesday. We're probably going to be doing mostly tree work because there's still roads that are impassable. There's driveways that are impassable. It's not like our driveway in our little subdivision. It's, this is probably a driveway that winds around and several, maybe even a mile or two long, that people are trapped up there because they can't get down because there's trees all across
So
it.
pray for us, those flatlanders. We don't do really well on those steep hills.
That's right. That's right. So we want to provide genuine ministry, and that's what it looks like. Number 5, avoid the temptation to donate supplies. And I think we already covered this, unless you're connected with someone on the ground and meeting a specific request. So we want to try to meet those specific requests. Tell us what you need, and we'll do our best to get exactly what it is that you're asking for. So we want to be targeted in that. Yes, I'm sure there's somebody that needs what we're wanting to give, but if we're working in a general area, we want to meet the needs of that general area. There's somebody else meeting the needs of that other area. So that's why we want to be targeted and specific. So, and we can't just take everything. I mean, we just can't do it. Offer biblical hope is the number 6. Point people to God. That's why we're doing this. It's an opportunity for God to get glory through this and to point them to somebody, because they need hope. When you're in this situation, you need hope. It doesn't matter what it is. It's hope that you need. And we've got the hope. We've got the message of the gospel. We've got Christ that we can share with people and offer them that biblical hope. And then number 7, listen to those affected by tragedy. I've seen it over and over and over again. Somebody's there, you're talking to them, and then that person who's not part of that scene, who's coming in, immediately goes talking about some story that they've been through. No. That's the worst thing you can do. We're going there to listen to that. This is their trauma. Okay. We're there to alleviate their trauma and give them hope. They don't need to know about our stories. They don't need to know about our horror stories. We want to go and listen and let them vent, let them talk, let them tell what happened to them, and then come alongside them and offer them that hope along with that. They don't need 15 other stories telling them, what you've been through or what you've been involved with or what you've done in the past or whatever. This is them, and we need to focus on them and listen to them. So listening is the best thing that we can do. Be prepared. Number 8, be prepared to share about the hope that we have in Christ. Again, we want to bring real peace, real hope, real life to a very difficult and bad situation. And then the 9th one is something I think we really need to be prudent about too, and that is volunteer at the right time. Like I said, it's no problem to get people to go right now. It's easy. All you got to do is say, hey, we're going on a trip. We're going to go over and help these people. And the compassion within people, especially in the South, I'll brag a little bit on us, especially in the South. We want to do something. We want to feel like we're involved in something, and we're going to do that, and we're doing that. But we also you got to pace this thing, because you got to realize we're not the only game in town. We're not the only church that's responding. There's multitudes of churches from multiple states responding. So again, we don't want to flood them and them start having to take care of us, and us taking away resources that need to be used for them, and overburden the thing. And that's what happens in a lot of these situations. And I've been on both sides of it, and I've seen it over and over and over again. Good intentions, great hearts, but sometimes it can be too many. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, we're turning people away now, but 6 months from now, we're going to be begging and pleading for people to come. And that's why I say we've got to volunteer at the right time. I think going on this is at the right time, because we're mainly going to be cutting trees and things like that, trying to clean up, get things out of the way. But even us going with 60 people, now think about that. You got to house 60 people. You got to have a place for 60 people. You got to feed 60 people. You got to do all those logistics to work out. And there's people on the ground trying to accommodate and let people come in and do because they want to help. But can you imagine being that guy? And all these people are calling you and saying, "Hey, when can we come?" And then they're getting mad at you because they're saying, "Well, we can't take you right now, but we can take you next week." Well, that should be fine. Take it and go with it. But people get upset. Well, they don't want our help. Well, yes, they do. They just,
Yeah.
you got to think of it from their side of things and their perspective. It's how many can we house? It's how many. I mean, some of us are going to be in tents. I mean, there's not enough space, which I'm looking forward to, by the way. But I may not after it gets in the 30s. I don't know, but I think I'll be fine. Um, all I'm asking is, we can't just, and I know people want to help and they want to volunteer and all that stuff. That's great. We're going to do that. But we need to do that strategically. We got to make sure that we're not overburdening people by doing that, or we're not adding to the problem by doing that. And you say, well, how could that happen? Well, I just told you, it's very easily done. It's very easily to overwhelm those on the ground with so many people coming in. And every one of them on the ground will tell you this is going to go on for years. It's going to go on for a couple of years, 3 years or 4 years, whatever it's going to take. So spread that out. We may take this trip and we're going to make another trip in a couple of weeks after what I talk about in just a second, but it may be a little span between then because we're in constant communication with those on the ground and they're saying, hey, hold off until next month and come. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to listen to those that are on the ground and what they tell us and what they need, and then we'll respond that way. So just know that that's the heart behind it. We're not, we want to help. We want you all to be able to help, but we want to do it in a way that is not going to be adding to the crisis, not adding to the grief that's already there. So yesterday I announced that we were going to try to do a project because I've heard from people over there. Obviously, it's starting to get, it's fall up in the mountains. It's a different temperature range than what we have down here at sea level. And things are starting to get cold and people have lost everything. So one of the things that they're looking for and asking for is winter clothing because they may have lost all their clothing. So, but you got to have a place that's going to be willing to house that, take it, and then get it out to people. So you want to make sure that you're in touch with somebody. So we're in touch with 2 different churches over there. And what we're going to do when we go up Wednesday is I'm going to try to get to each one of those churches and verify and make sure we got all the logistics worked out of when we bring them and all that kind of stuff. But we've got a list of items. It's basically all winter stuff. It can be coats, sweaters, jackets, sweatshirts, jeans. It could be any type of snow stuff like gloves, mittens, toboggans, bib pants. Yes, anything like that. Boots, shoes are fine as long as they're good. Now, listen, I told some people today, we're not wanting what you would have thrown in the garbage. Don't do that. We want to be the best representatives of Christ that we can be. We're not taking things to get rid of things. We're giving things to help. And if you wouldn't wear it, then don't send it. I don't mean to be ugly, but that's just reality. I mean, it's like leaving a tip for a waitress. If you're going to leave a witness track on the table, you better have a good tip there, or they're not going to read the track. It's just not going to happen. That's not a good witness. So we want good things that are still in great shape, and we're going to call them here at the church. We're going to go through them and we're going to get some folks involved. And the reason behind that is I want to involve as many people in our church as we can in this ministry so they feel like they're participating in it. So not only bring the stuff, but we're going to have folks here, hopefully, that will come and sort through that stuff, put it in gender specific areas for men and women, boys and girls, sizes, and bag those things up or box them up. And that way, when they get there, nobody has to do anything. The box is labeled, the bag is labeled, whatever. They can put it in whatever section they've got it in. And we've already gone through and culled everything, so everything is good to go. because that looks good on us. That looks good on Christ, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can in that area. So we want to do as much on this end so they don't have to do anything on their end but get the stuff out. And so that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to do that for the next couple of weeks. So help us get the word out. We're going to bring things to the FLC building and the gym. We're going to set up a few tables in there for people to come and just drop stuff off and put it on those tables. And then we're going to be talking about to people in the church that can come during the week and volunteer and sort through those things and start packing those things. I know we got some boxes that are coming as well that we can put those things in, but we want to separate, we want to label, we want to cull, we want to make sure we're sending things that are going to be beneficial and that will help. So this idea is for clothing this time, because that's what we've been told is needed from these two places. So right now it's clothing. It may be something else a month from now, but right now it's clothing. So that's all we're taking. And I think I've covered all that. So is there anything I missed on that?
Mm-mm.
Anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say something that I learned last night. Our association, if I understand it correctly from Pastor John McIntyre, we have been given the responsibility to finish up the disaster relief request in Brunswick County from PTC 8. And really, that's the bad thing. It was unnamed storm. And then right after that, you had two big storms come. So those people are kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
So, we understand not everybody can go on a trip to the mountains during the week. And you certainly, if you try to go on the weekend, you don't really have a whole lot of time. And so I would encourage those that maybe want to do something like this, can't take the trip, but you have a Saturday, get up with us, get up with the association and find out what's going on with the response, just one county over, because they have some events that need to take place over there. I forgot how many jobs they had, 12 or 13 or something like that. So there is something for everybody to do.
Yeah.
And like you said, involving the whole church, there's something for everybody to do. And everybody's going to be needed, because there's still houses being rebuilt from Florence. Mm-hmm. And that was 6 years ago. So we need to continue to just keep plugging along.
Yeah. And we will, John will be with us on the trip Wednesday, so we'll get some time with him that we can talk about what's going on in Brunswick County and what those projects look like, and we can bring that information back and send some people up there to take care of one or two of those projects as well. So that would be something here locally that would be an easy Saturday.
Sleep in your bed.
Deal. Yeah, sleep in your own bed. Get up, go work that morning, work all day, and then come home and know you've accomplished something and you've helped somebody out. So we definitely want to follow up on that too, because that was mentioned last night, and I didn't know about it. So I thought everything had been pretty well handled. But there again, when something like this happens, all that's forgotten, because all the attention's towards these two latest storms, and of course, obviously the amount of devastation that was caused. But yes, we'll check up on that, and we'll have that information here for folks that want to do something short term and local.
Yeah. So, like I said, pray for us Flatlanders. It's amazing to me, like when we go up there with the youth and we start going up those hills, and you're like, man, what is the deal? Well, you've lived your whole life. Yes. You have. I think we have muscle groups that are not developed. Yes. And then you have some 80-year-old mountain raised lady just passing you, and you're like, I'm embarrassed.
Yes. I'll tell this in hush. I'll never forget my first trip to Peru. Everything was like, completely vertical. We're at the top of the Andes Mountains. We're twice the elevation of Denver, Colorado, and we're gasping for air just because we're in that altitude. And there was a lady there that looked like she was probably 100 years old, but she was really only in her 70s, or they just look older. The Quechuan people do. And she leaves, and she's got a stick, and she's got a backpack that looks like it's not a backpack. It's a blanket that she's got thrown over her. She leaves and she doesn't come back for like 8 hours. But when she comes back, she's got more wood on her back than I could carry. But it's all in that sack that she's got back there, and she walked all the way up, further up that mountain, collecting these pieces of wood to come back because she was going to need that to build the fire to cook in and everything that night or for the next couple of days. I was blown away because I'm gasping for air walking up steps, and this woman's done past me, and then I don't see her for 8 hours, and she comes back with more wood than I could possibly carry, and she was like 5 foot nothing. I mean, maybe 4 foot nothing. But yes, yeah, those people that walk up and down those mountains every single day, they are obviously in better shape than Flatlanders, as you call us.
Yes. Yes. We're not flat earthers. We are flatlanders. That's another topic altogether. But really do pray for us. Pray for everybody going. I mean, there's going to be people just thrown together. I say that, nicely, just thrown together as a team. But everybody, has the same heart, and just pray for good communication with the leadership up there and the different teams and where to go. And, sometimes it can get a little sticky when you're not from the area trying to get out. But really, most of all, which has been my prayer, and I think was the emphasis of this weekend, was wherever you are, wherever you go, ask God for those gospel conversations. We may not see the fruit come from it, but we certainly need to sow that seed. We need to share the gospel. As you say, we need to leave them with the hope of the gospel. Because if we just go up there, cut the trees, clean out the house, they're lost when we come. Nobody shares with them. They're lost when we leave. You've got to ask yourself, are they really better off?
Right.
And so eternity would say no.
Yeah.
And so, for people like me that are like goal and job oriented, that's hard to, I've got to make myself do that because I'm just naturally geared to accomplish the task. And so I have to remember what a professor said. The interruptions in ministry are your ministry.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be, you can pray for that for me.
Yes, absolutely. Can we put in the notes at the bottom of this our giving page for the website?
Yep.
You can go on our website. There's a tab there that you can click the down arrow on, and you can select disaster relief. And I think it says specifically Helena. So you can do that. Helene, not Helena. Yeah, I misspelled. Anyway, but you can click on that and you can give, and that goes directly to Baptist Men and Disaster Relief. So we collect that. We'll give you all a total of what we've collected. I think as I mentioned yesterday, we've sent over $5,000 already of what you've given. So thank you for that. And if you want to give, that's the best way to do it. You can give right through the church. We'll send it right on to them, and that takes care of it. So that's the easiest way to do it.
All right. There you have it. Look for that link. Give as you can, either in money or in time. But definitely please give in prayer. We'll see y'all.